Everyone in the city knew his name, but no one truly knew his heart. Women admired his wealth, but were their smiles meant for him or for his gold? He longed for love that was real, not built on riches. So, one night, he made a bold decision: he would leave it all behind and live as a poor man. Only then would he discover the truth. In the city of Kaduna, there lived a man named Emeka. He was one of the wealthiest traders in the land, known far and wide for his success. His warehouses were filled with gold, fine cloth, and spices from distant lands. He owned many farms, large buildings, and had servants who catered to his every need. Yet, despite all his riches, something troubled him deeply. Emeka had not always been wealthy. As a young man, he had worked hard, starting with just a small shop where he sold cloth. Through wisdom, hard work, and some good luck, his business grew year after year. Now at 35 years of age, he had more money than he could spend in a lifetime. His home was the largest in Kaduna, with tall walls painted white and a roof of red clay tiles that could be seen from far away. Inside, the floors were covered with beautiful rugs, and the walls held paintings from many lands. Every morning, servants brought him breakfast on golden plates. His clothes were made from the finest materials, and he never walked anywhere. He was always carried in a decorated chair by 4 strong men. The people of Kaduna bowed when they saw him coming. Children ran alongside his chair, pointing and whispering his name with awe. Whenever Emeka met a woman, he could never tell if she truly loved him or if she was only drawn to his wealth. Every time he walked through the city, women admired his fine robes and spoke sweet words whenever they saw his golden rings. They laughed at his jokes, even when they were not funny, and always found reasons to praise him. But in his heart, he knew they were not in love with him, only with what he had. At big feasts and celebrations, the most beautiful women in Kaduna would sit near him. They would bring him gifts and tell him stories of their families. Their fathers and brothers would suggest that Emeka visit their homes, hoping he might choose one of their daughters or sisters as a wife. But Emeka could see the hunger in their eyes, not hunger for love, but hunger for his gold. How will I ever find true love? He often wondered as he lay in his large, lonely bed at night. How will I know if someone loves me for who I am inside? His closest friend, Chidi, who had known him since childhood, noticed his sadness. "What troubles you, my friend?" Chidi asked one evening as they sat in Emeka's garden. "You have everything a man could want." "Not everything," Emeka replied with a heavy sigh. "I have no one to share it with, no one who loves me for myself, not for my wealth." "Perhaps you are too suspicious," suggested Chidi. "There are many good women in Kaduna." "Yes, but how can I know who is sincere?" Emeka asked. "When a woman smiles at me, is she seeing Emeka the man, or Emeka the wealthy trader?" They talked long into the night, but found no answer. When Chidi left, Emeka sat alone in his garden, watching the stars and thinking. One evening, as he sat alone in his grand house, surrounded by treasures but with no true companion, he made a decision. If he wanted to find true love, he had to leave his riches behind and live as a poor man. Only then would he know if a woman truly loved him for who he was, not for what he owned. He shared his plan with nobody, not even Chidi. He knew his friend would try to stop him, calling the idea foolish and dangerous. But Emeka's mind was made up. That night, he could hardly sleep. His heart raced with fear and excitement. Was he brave enough to leave everything behind? What if he failed and returned alone? What if life as a poor man was too hard? But deeper than these fears was his desire to find true love, a love based on who he truly was. At the break of dawn, Emeka removed his fine robes and dressed in old, worn-out clothes that belonged to one of his servants. He left behind his jewelry, his grand home, and his servants. With only a small cloth bag containing a little food, some water, and a few coins, he set out on his journey. Before leaving, he wrote a letter to Chidi, "My dear friend, do not worry about me. I have gone to find what money cannot buy. Tell no one where I have gone or why. Take care of my home and business until I return. Your friend, Emeka." He left the city while it was still dark, slipping past the guards who did not recognize him in his simple clothes. As the sun rose behind him, he looked back at Kaduna one last time. The morning light made the city glow like gold. For a moment, he almost turned back, but then he remembered his empty heart and continued walking. He traveled far from Kaduna, passing through many towns and villages. He walked for days, eating only when he found food and sleeping under trees when he found no shelter. His feet, unused to walking long distances, became sore and blistered. The sun burned his skin, which had always been protected by servants holding shades over him. He quickly learned how hard life could be without money. In the first village he stopped at, he tried to buy food with one of his coins, but the shopkeeper looked at him suspiciously. "Where did you get this money?" the man asked. "You look like a beggar." "I earned it through honest work," Emeka replied, though in truth, he had not worked in many years. The shopkeeper reluctantly sold him some food, but charged him more than was fair. Emeka did not argue. This was part of what he needed to learn. He continued his journey, moving further away from Kaduna. Sometimes, kind people would offer him food or a place to sleep. Other times, he was chased away like a stray dog. He learned to be grateful for small kindnesses and to endure hardships without complaint. He finally arrived at a small, quiet town where no one knew him. It was called Emoji, and it was a humble place with small mud houses, a marketplace, and fields of yams and cassava surrounding it. The people were neither rich nor very poor, and they worked hard and lived simple lives. Life in the town was hard. Unlike the city, where everything had been provided for him, he now had to work for his survival. On his first day, he sat in the marketplace, hungry and tired. An old woman selling vegetables noticed him. "You are new here," she said, looking at him with kind but questioning eyes. "Where do you come from?" "Far away," Emeka replied simply. "I am looking for work." The old woman, whose name was Mama Ada, studied him for a moment. "You have the hands of someone who has not worked much," she observed. "But your eyes are honest." "I am old and live alone. My house needs repairs and my garden needs tending. If you are willing to work, I can offer you a place to stay." Emeka agreed gratefully. Mama Ada's house was small, with just 2 rooms and a leaking roof. She showed him to a corner where he could sleep on a mat on the floor. It was nothing like his grand bed in Kaduna, but he was thankful for the shelter. Every morning, he fetched water from the river, carried firewood from the forest, and worked in the fields. His hands, once soft and unused to labor, became rough and calloused. His back ached from bending over crops all day, and his skin darkened under the sun. But strangely, he found a certain peace in this simple life. Mama Ada was surprised by how quickly he learned. "You work hard for someone who clearly comes from better circumstances," she said one evening as they ate a simple meal of yam and vegetable soup. "How do you know I come from better circumstances?" Emeka asked, surprised. "The way you speak, the way you hold yourself," she replied with a knowing smile. "You are hiding something, young man, but your secret is safe with me. We all have reasons for the paths we choose." The people of the town barely noticed him, treating him like any other struggling worker. Children sometimes followed him, curious about the newcomer, but most adults were too busy with their own work to pay him much attention. But there was one woman who saw something different in him. Her name was Ngozi. She was the daughter of a farmer and was known in the town for her kindness and wisdom. She was not the most beautiful woman by Kaduna standards, she did not wear makeup or fine clothes. But her eyes were bright, her smile genuine, and her laugh could lighten the heaviest heart. She worked hard, helping her mother sell goods in the market, and she never judged people by their appearance. Emeka first saw her at the river. He was struggling to balance a heavy water pot on his head, as he had seen others do. The pot kept slipping, spilling water down his back. Instead of laughing at him like some others did, Ngozi came to help. "Like this," she said, showing him how to fold a piece of cloth into a ring to place on his head before balancing the pot. "It makes it easier." With her help, he managed to balance the pot. "Thank you," he said, grateful not just for the help but for her kindness. After that, they often met at the river or in the marketplace. Unlike the women in Kaduna who always wanted something from him, Ngozi asked for nothing. She simply enjoyed talking with him, sharing stories and ideas. One evening, after a long day of work, Emeka sat under a tree, exhausted and covered in dust. Ngozi was passing by and saw him resting. She stopped and handed him a small pot of food. "You work hard," she said with a gentle smile. "Eat this. It will give you strength." Emeka looked at her with surprise. In the city, people had only shown him kindness because of his riches. But here, where he had nothing, Ngozi had offered him food without expecting anything in return. He took the food and thanked her. From that day on, they became close. They walked together to the market, fetched water from the river, and shared stories under the moonlight. Emeka told her stories of Kaduna, careful not to reveal too much about himself. Ngozi told him about her dreams of starting a small school for the children of Umoji. "Many children here never learn to read or write," she explained. "I believe everyone should have that chance." Emeka admired Ngozi's dreams and her determination to make life better for others. He admired her honesty and kindness. She did not care for wealth, she cared for people. As the weeks passed, Emeka found himself falling in love. Not a shallow love he had known in Kaduna, but a deep, true love based on who Ngozi was as a person. He wondered if she felt the same. One evening, as they sat by the fire outside Mama Ada's house, Emeka turned to her and asked, "If I had nothing to offer but myself, would you still care for me?" Ngozi looked at him with surprise. "But you have nothing to offer but yourself now," she said. "And yes, I care for you deeply." She took his hand in hers. A person's worth is not measured by gold. A good heart is worth more than riches. Emeka knew then that he had found the love he had been searching for. But there was still one thing left to do. He had to tell her the truth. The next morning, he asked Ngozi to meet him by the big tree outside the village. When she arrived, he was waiting, his heart pounding in his chest. "Ngozi," he began, "there is something you must know about me." He took a deep breath and said, "My real name is Emeka, and I am not a poor man. I am one of the wealthiest traders in Kaduna. I left everything behind to find someone who would love me for who I truly am." Ngozi listened carefully, her eyes widening in surprise. "I was tired of women loving me only for my money," he continued. "I wanted to find true love, and I have found it with you. You loved me when I had nothing." Ngozi was quiet for a long time. Emeka feared she would be angry at his deception. Finally, she spoke. "I do not care if you are rich or poor," she said. "I loved you as a hardworking man, not because of what you owned. If you are also Emeka, the rich man, it does not change what I feel." But then her face grew serious. "But why did you not trust me with the truth sooner?" Emeka explained his fears and doubts, how wealth had made it impossible for him to know if anyone truly cared for him. Ngozi listened and understood. "What happens now?" she asked. "I want you to be my wife," Emeka said. "Will you come with me to Kaduna?" Ngozi thought for a moment. "I will go with you," she said. "But promise me one thing, that we will use some of your wealth to build the school I dreamed of, here in Umoji. I promise, Emeka said, his heart full of joy. Before leaving, Emeka revealed his true identity to Mama Ada and thanked her for her kindness. He gave her enough money to repair her house and live comfortably for the rest of her life. The old woman was not surprised. I knew you were more than you seemed, she said with a smile. Be happy, and remember the lessons you learned here. When Emeka returned to Kaduna, news of his arrival spread quickly. Chidi was overjoyed to see his friend and relieved that he was safe. For 3 months, people had wondered where the wealthy trader had gone. Many women who had once ignored him now tried to gain his attention. They smiled at him, spoke sweet words, and even tried to remind him of past conversations that had never happened. But Emeka had already made his choice. He sent word to Ngozi and her family, inviting them to his home for a grand celebration. When Ngozi arrived, dressed in simple but beautiful clothing, the people of the city whispered, "She is not from a noble family. She does not wear fine clothes. Why would a man of such wealth choose her?" But Emeka silenced them with his words. Ngozi's heart is richer than gold, and her kindness is more valuable than any treasure. She is the one I have chosen. The wedding was unlike any other. It was not the golden plates or the expensive decorations that made it special, but the love and joy that filled the air. People from the town and the city gathered to celebrate, and they saw for themselves the love between Emeka and Ngozi. After the wedding, true to his promise, Emeka used some of his wealth to build a school in Umoji. He and Ngozi often visited, bringing books and supplies. The school was named Ngozi's Dream, and it changed the lives of many children. In Kaduna, Emeka and Ngozi lived simply, despite their wealth. They shared their good fortune with others, helping those in need. Ngozi never changed, she remained kind and humble, treating servants and nobles with the same respect. Years later, when they had children of their own, Emeka and Ngozi taught them the most important lesson they had learned. That the richest person is not the one with the most gold, but the one with the most love. They lived happily, proving to all that true love is not found in wealth, but in the heart. And so, the businessman who once pretended to be poor had found the greatest treasure of all, love that was real and pure.